Welcome back, guys. So it's the morning after the night before, and we're looking at step number 7. And as promised, I have cleaned up all the parts. So if we look at the instructions, then we have two what appear to be strengtheners to go on the trailer deck, and they've also got these locating points for the trailer axle points, or the axle stations as I would call them. We've got a rear strengthening point, or no, in fact a front strengthening cross member, and then the center steering cross member that we built up in part 6, as well as there's a metal axle to go in, and then the rear cross member for the trailer, and obviously some strengthening plates for that rear cross member. So if we take and look at this in real life, so here's the part we built up in the last step, and as you can see, that's now everything's cured up, totally positionable and all holding its own. Really rather nice. So well done, HobbyBoss. And this is a really strong structural part now, and the fit is actually remarkably good here. So it clicks into place. We've got the axle here. Now the axle just goes in, and there is a detent for it to click in. I'm not going to bother taking it out because there's no point, because I'm going to go straight back in. These parts are good. They're nice and flat. They're not warped. You can see the axle there. So the first thing to do will be to put these bits in, and they just fit here. So this is, if I get it the right way around, so we've got part M5 and M6, and they just lock in to those openings there. That's a good positive fit, like so. So you can either glue them from the top or glue them from the bottom, whichever suits best. They go in nicely like that. Might be a little bit of flash on that, actually, thinking about it. Just before it's pushing itself out. And there has been a little bit of flash on this kit, to be fair. And then you look at the size and the complexity of some of the molds that have had the flash in it, there's really no wonder that there's flash on the kit. And we'll just check for these ejector pins that they're not going to cause any interference, which they are not. And this one is, that's why this part was popping out. And that's been a recurring theme with parts on this kit, is the ejector pins, they do leave quite an impression, and there is a little flash linked with that pin mark. So just that little bit of care and attention to clean that flash away makes for a better result. So clip these parts back in there. Happy days. And we can come in with our extra thin and just wick it in around. And you can be generous because it's got quite a large gluing surface, so that it will soak it up, give you a strong bond. There we go. Just press that part home. Avoid getting any of the glue over your fingers. You do not want to put any fingerprints on the top of this decking. Right, next step, get me words out properly. Next step is to get parts N30 and N1. We need to make sure they're orientated in the correct manner. So that you see these two cutouts there, they go to the top end, And when you do a test fit, you can often see areas that you've maybe missed before that have got a little touch of flash in. That's a good positive fit on that part. Yeah, so there is a little touch of flash in some of these apertures here on the deck. Just go in with the point of the knife and scrape clean it away, no problem at all. Right, now we need to decide how we're going to put this in. Again, I checked this for flash across the ejector pins, and I just gave it a gentle rub off with a reasonably coarse sanding stick to take any high points away. So we want a good strong bond here, because this technically is a structural part. So I'm going to revert back to our Revell contactor, and we're just going to do a run around the perimeter. And we can just do on these individual connecting points here and then across here, and that will give us the strongest possible adhesion of these parts to each other. If we were just going to rely on extra thin around the outside of this part, then you would have little to no bonding in the center of the part, which just kind of builds a bit of inherent weakness into the structure. At least this way we know we're going to have a good strong bond. Just make sure that any bits of debris don't get fall on this flat surface, because they will impede the gluing of this. There we go, and when we're happy with that, we just want to locate this part back in where it was, press it home. For a good bond. And then just for belt and braces, what we can do, and it'll help clean up any over glue, is just come in here with the extra thin and paint it over the joints. That will help dissolve any of the contactor that might have squeezed out the joint, and it'll just increase the strength of the bond. I think if you've seen on many of my builds, when I'm building a large part that's going to take a bit of load structurally, I do like to use this sort of Revell contactor Tamiya extra thin glue combination. I just feel it gives you the best possible glued result. Right, so same on this side. And really the Revell contactor with the needle applicator is a very, very accurate way of gluing. And the other advantage with the contactor is that it doesn't flash off as quickly as the extra thin. So it does just give you that little bit more working time, and that lack of pressure to get stuff done means you usually will make less mistakes, get more accurate work. I didn't do it on the other one, but I suppose we could also glue here. just to aid the strength. I think we'll be all right. And then that just turns over and locates exactly the same as the first one. And the main thing of having a good flat surface is to make sure we're building this without any warping, because many a good model has been ruined because it's warped in the gluing process. If you wanted, you could get something weighty, a book or something on this, set it down for an hour or so whilst the glue cures up and bonds in place, set the chassis flat. I'm quite happy with how ours is at the moment, so I'm just happy to press on. Very confident in the glue joints that they're going to be good and strong and solid now. Right, next thing to go on is this front cross member box section. Okay, there's a little bit of wiggle room there, but not a lot. But again, we're going to use the Revell contactor just as sparingly, so we don't want it just gushing out. There we go. That pops down there. Now the main thing here is just to lift it up, eyeball it to make sure that this is equal and even. The other thing I need to do is there's a little bit of glue spillage there, so we'll just come in with our extra thin and brush that over that, which will dissolve it, and when it cures up it will be as if it never happened. But you will have it'll blow off to get the worst of it off. You'll have a very, very strong joint there. Right, and that's starting to get a bit of weight in it. So we have this part here to put on now. I haven't fully cleaned this part up on purpose. This is the rear cross member, you can see there. Again, there's a little bit of flash around the ejector pin. A little scrape with a scalpel blade. And that flash just rubs away. And there's a little bit of flash here. The mold parting line. So don't be frightened if your kit's got a little bit of flash on it. It's nothing to worry about. It's very, very easy sorted. Right, this part we're just going to use some extra thin for. So it just goes on here on the back, and then we have these two side plates, so N3 and N19. So what I'm suggesting we ought to do is actually put the side plates on first. I'll figure out how they go. Okay, so they go on like so. So what I'm suggesting we do is just pop that down there and get that side plate in position, and then we can just drop a little bit of glue in that joint. Into position, hold it. Yep, that's okay. Same with this side. A little bit of glue. This is the trouble with HobbyBoss instructions, sometimes they're a little vague as to the position of the parts, so you have to do a bit of figuring out. I actually think that these parts need to go forward more and line up with that part there, leaving a gap here. I think that's how they go. And then this part comes on here, and we'll square them up. Yeah, that's more like it. So we'll lock in the center section first, and being very careful not to get glue coming through the joint onto our fingers. We might get away with a bit of super glue here if it's not going to hold or want to hold. I think it is gripping now. And then just touch and flow in here. Touch and flow in there. Here. And here. Mark one eyeball across the back. Make sure it's all square. Yeah, it's a little vague, but we're getting there. I'm assuming there's a stanchion or something that goes in there that will extend a pad down to the floor to protect the rear of the trailer when it's loading. Reasonably happy with that joint. I think we'll put a drop of this glue on here. That's the other thing you can use for this with this glue, is it does have a bit of gap filling properties. So it's almost like a bead sealant or a plastic weld. You can paint that on, let it wick in, manipulate and hold, and then come back in and just brush it over to liquefy it a bit, and it will fill that joint, and you'll end up losing any gaps that were there before. So we just want to hold that for a couple of minutes. And then we need to think about getting this central chassis piece in, which should strengthen this whole construction up no end. If we think this isn't going to hold, or we want to hurry it up, and it's in an out of the way place like this, what we can do is just clean away the brucky glue. So we can just come in with the super glue and just spread it in that joint there. We'll get a cotton bud just to wick away the huge amount of excess. You can spread it down there. And what we can do now is get our activator. And what we need to do is just hold this. Actually set it down, it might be easier. So hold it in position where you want that glue to cure up. You do need multiple pairs of hands. It's difficult when you're trying to film it, but you hold that in position and then just give it a spray and hold. And what will happen is the super glue will cure and act as a bit of a natural clamping mechanism for the solvent glue to do its thing. Just blow on the activator and it'll evaporate away. And you'll see the super glue starting to turn as it cures. So just hold it in place. There we go. Good strong joint. A little bit of seepage through there, but we can clean that away with a scalpel blade. Nothing to worry about. So, last but not least, we have our central cross member to go in, and now we've got this back and front cross members in place, then that's a good, strong, positive fit. Again, because this is a good structural part, we're going to be out with the Revell contactor in the first instance. And we've got a nice frame to follow. So you just want to put a nice even bead along this part, right to the end there. Same on this side. There we go. And you don't need to squeeze this tube. I've probably said it before. The simple act of gravity and the warmth of your hands warming the air in the tube means this stuff flows really, really nicely in a nice controllable rate. We'll just put a little drop on this joint here, just to give this joint a little extra strength. And then we need to put some in here as well. There we go. And then locate one end first, make sure it's centered, in with the second end, and then push down. And check that that is centered on both ends, which it is. And now you're getting a really, really strong, solid trailer-like structure coming together. And having this built the night before and curing overnight has made it so much easier to do this now. If you were just horsing through and trying to do this whilst this was still a bit tacky, you wouldn't get that squared true finish. It would be probably warp and generally be a difficult construction to do. So just coming in with a little bit of extra thin just to help make sure that that Revell contactor has got a good solid grip on all the parts. And that bond will never come apart in the month of Sundays. It'll be together for as long as you need it to be together. And then we just come in here and brush it down there. There we go. Right, so that is the core of the trailer built. Now we move on to part 8. So in part 8 we've got the strengthening construction here for the rear. And like I thought, yeah, there's these stanchion legs here that go down and foot the rear of the trailer when it's getting the tank to access it. And then we've got more air fittings to put on by the looks of it. And we've got these cross members to go in from the center to the outer trailer rails. So there's quite a bit of construction work yet, and it's going to add more weight and substance to this trailer. So as always, what I'll do is I will get all these parts, cut off the sprue, cleaned up, ready to go, and we'll come back when we're ready to start putting glue to plastic. So see you again in a moment. Right guys, welcome back, and I have got all the parts made ready except for the photo etch, but we'll do these bits last. So looking at this, I think the first thing we're going to need to do is make up this part here, Q28 and P16. So this looks like the D-shackle mounting bracket. Beautiful shackle detail. If you look at that on my finger, you can see there you've got the bow shackle with the attaching pin, and there's even the hole in the end of the attaching pin for your marlin spike to go into to tighten. So again, just getting this orientation correct, the way that it is in the picture, and just with a, might even be easier doing with my fingers, just gently tease the plastic over so it goes into the slot on Q28, and it's obviously going to raise and lower up and down that slot there. So we have to make 6 of these, and then these go into the trailer deck plate. Yeah, that's easy enough to do. And the plastic's flexible enough that it'll do that if you're gentle without breaking. There were some ejector pin marks on these parts, but they filed out no problem at all with the flat file I use. That one wasn't quite cleaned up so well. Let's just snip that off. Not so easy to see with my great clumsy fingers, I'm afraid, but right, so that's those parts all together ready to go, and then we've got these parts here for the hydraulic and pneumatic lines. So make sure we orientate the trailer frame in the correct orientation as to the parts we're putting on. Then it would appear these parts with the bow shackle pointing down, like so. Then go through here, and there is a detent or a cutout in this webbing, strengthening webbing, just there. So bow shackle down through the deck of the trailer, and then you lock that part Q28 just into that web there, and then the back of it rests in a recess on the back side. So that should just take a small bit of glue, just applied there and there. Bit of gentle pressure just to aid the bonding, and away she goes. So the rest of the parts will attach just exactly the same, although the one in the middle, sorry, the ones on the end, that's funny how they've done that. They're all slightly different orientation, but you'll naturally see which way they go for the little check that's been taken out of the webbing. Corresponds to a keyway that's on the part itself. So you see that there, it just locks in. Doesn't want to fall through, of course. So shackle down through, and then press home. There we go. So that's a simple enough fit. And then we just come in with some extra thin to secure it in place. as long as you keep the extra thin away from the ends of the shackle, then you'll have a movable part. Right, so we've got another 4 of those to go on, and then the next thing to go on, if I move these cross braces out of the way, is these fixings. 5 on each side, and there's a long side and a short side, and they go into pre-cut slots in the deck. They just sit in there. So all we'll have to do is come in with extra thin, wick it into that slot. I can do a couple of these, and then lay these parts in. We will need to push and hold just to get them to grip. And that's that. It's those parts there. And the final part is we've got P1, 5 on each side, and the P1 parts go in these cutouts. Yep, so these P1 parts locate in, you'll see here and here you've got 2 ridges and then a small gap between the ridge and the end of this part here, this run. So it obviously fits between there, and it's snug up to the chassis. So just slide it in that way first, and then line it up and a gentle click. And it is a very snug fit. What I'm thinking to do is, I think what we'll do is I'll get all these fixed in on this side, and then we'll put all 10 of these cross braces in, and then we'll glue them. So we've got our opposing forces to keep it all square, otherwise I'm worried it'll flex a bit. So I'll get this lot in, these 2 and these 4, and then we'll get all these parts in, and then we can come back and look at the end chassis pieces and these stays at the end. So back in a minute. Back after getting all that structure built into this trailer, and it really is now a very, very solid piece of plastic. So it's really, really strengthened up. There's no warp or flex in it at all, which is really good. So next thing to do is fit in these rear box section pieces. So obviously it's just strengthening sections for the bit of the trailer that obviously takes a pounding when it loads or recovers armoured vehicles. Not the easiest parts to get in. Good snug fit in underneath that central pylon. So just need to hook it in and then kind of twist the part into place. Once it's in place, it is a very snug fit. And you'll be happy to know that's the first time I've put these parts in as well. I figured they'd be difficult to get in, so I just wanted to get them in once and leave them in. So 1 or 2 little gaps here, but nothing that we can't sort out with a little drop of filler. And to be fair, with the amount of individual parts that go into making this trailer unit, I'm actually not surprised that there's a couple of gaps here and there. The fact that it's as within tolerance as it is a testament to the kit maker's abilities when they make the tools. So plenty of extra thin, wick it around the joints, and then just come in and push and squeeze just to get that bond started. And even doing that will close up some of these gaps. Unless you've got this thing parked on a mirror, you're never going to see them anyway. But we can always come back in and sort them out after. But that really is firming up the back end. What we can do is I'm going to get our trusty close peg clamp. From my tool drawers. So we can just pop a clamp in there and that will just hold it in place. It might actually be worth popping one in on that angle there. So it's holding it together, but it's also holding it down. So it's kind of clamping it diagonally, forced into each other. Right, we've also got these tie down eyes here, and they just go in on the end here. Again, they're a good positive fit. A very positive fit, actually. A bit of flash or miss mold there. We'll try the other one. Might need to trim down the attachment lug to get them in. Yeah, that's not one to go in. So easily sorted. We can just get a file and chase the attachment point. It probably won't need much. There is a bit of flash on the part. We'll clean it once it's cured. Yeah, there you go. A little bit of chasing work. Drop of glue. That part is now firmly in place. So I'll probably have to do the same on this side. But we'll try it anyway first off. Yep. Just not going to go. That's the first time I've actually had a part that doesn't really want to fit. You can see how little that we're taking off it. And that fits straight away, so not a problem. A little bit of cleanup work. And that part is absolutely perfect. Press it home. Good. We'll clean the rest of it up once it's absolutely solid. Right, so before we put on the photo etch and these sort of pneumatic cylinders here, we've got these stanchion legs to sort out. So they are left-handed and right-handed. We've got this little bracket here. We have the actual stanchion itself. They have a seam, yeah, they do have a seam, so I've not cleaned this part up. So just metal file, easiest, quickest way to do it. Probably quicker than a sand and stick because good quality metal files have really good sharp cutting teeth. And it just absolutely cuts through flash and sprue attachment points. The main thing is they don't flex as much as a sand and stick, so the cut you get from it is square and true, whereas with a sand and stick you can actually get flex in the file and it will round the edges off, so you don't actually end up with a part that is as true to form as it should be. So orientate the part within the instructions, And then the feet here. There's a P drum or glue, I think. There we go. Bit of pressure to get a good strong bond. And then that goes up within the legs. Now I'm having my vehicle laden, loaded and locked down for the road, so these will actually be up in the up position. And then they just go from there. They've got a little fastening locating step on the back side, and then that just goes in to that area that was left. It's a good tight fit as well. I think we need to clean that up. Possibly. There we go. Very tight fit. That's good. That's what we want. Extra thin. And let that bond up. There we go. So same again for this side. We can actually put this one in first. Now we know what we're doing. So that just goes in there. And then should go tight in and just pop up through the deck. There you go. That's it. Make sure it's level and even with the other side. Secure it in with glue. And then the feet just go up. And the feet go across the way rather as forward and back. And we can just glue that in place. Those landing legs will only be deployed when they're loading up. And that purely is to take the full weight of the vehicle that's been loaded onto the trailer. Probably repeat myself here. And if you didn't have them deployed and locked, then when you load up, all that loading weight and pressure on the rear of the trailer gets put into the trailer axle system, and it'll lead to breakages and failure. So if you look at most heavy plant trailers, they do have landing legs on the back cross member for that very purpose. So spot of glue in there. Drop that in, press it home, and then set it in. That is a good fit. All the parts are cleaned up, no problem whatsoever. Drop of glue. There we go. Just check that they're square up and down. I think what I'm going to do is just get a clamp and just clamp that one in. So I've got these old F clamps I've had for years. Used to be able to get them on the old eBay or Amazon shops, but I don't know if they're made anymore. But very, very handy clamps. And they were pretty cheap in the day. They were only about £5 for a pack of 2. So they're just friction clamps, and they just hold that in. Right. So the last thing we've got to do is work with the pneumatic cylinders. There's one for each side. That way and that way. So we need foot wedge parts SC. SD, that must be SC there, is it? SB, SA. Right, I'll find the foot wedge parts. We'll come back and get them folded and glued together, and then we can get these parts on and then look to the next section. So back shortly. Right guys, we're back and we have completed construction. I was going to show you putting these last two pieces on, but I'll be honest with you, I just cracked on and got them. It was two simple right angle bends, sticking the foot wedge parts on the end of the accumulator and then sticking them down to the underside of the trailer unit. So that's that section done. So looking at the next section, which is part 8, then we have quite a bit of work to do. So we've got to put in all these lashing eyes on the lower side to fill in these blanks here. And then we need to put on the recovery points or lashing points on the back light units, and then possibly need to look at starting to put on the hydraulic lines to the steering gear. And then for part 10 we're actually looking to build up the actual wheel stations. And we've got to make 10 of them, which will be fun. So what I'm proposing to do is, we've seen me do lots of foot wedge work before, is I will do the bulk of the construction but leave just a couple of the bits that are needing to be finished, so I can get to a point where we can come and have a look, do a little bit of work, and then I'll build the bulk of the wheel stations and come back and we'll look at putting a couple together. Otherwise it could be quite boring watching me putting 10 units together. So take care and we'll see you in the next video.